Alright, so right here we're looking at Kai and Christopher, and they're sailing downwind in driving force conditions probably. A couple of things to look at. Christopher is really active on the main sheet, which is really good. He uses the main sheet to steer and doesn't really move the tiller all that much. He uses the main sheet more than he uses the tiller, which is really important. Kai is trapping. He could have his feet a little closer together to get a little more extension on the boat. Kind of hard to see with the sun right there, but there you go. You can see that his front foot is pretty far forward. He could be leaning back on that back foot a little bit more with his feet closer together, and I think that would help him stay stable on the wire and at the same time get maximum extension out there. Christopher's hiking nice and hard, which is good. They both look real comfortable, so this is a pretty good look for a driving force downwind condition. Here we've got Duncan and Charlie, and this is a pretty good view of the jib leech. As you can see, the jib leech is open, but it's not that open. If you were to look at the main leech and the kite leech, I think you would see that both are much more open than the jib leech. So in this case, I think that the jib needs to be eased a lot more, and that was the case for a lot of boats out there this weekend. We generally tended to sail with our jibs too tight, so I don't know if that's a boatwork issue or if it's just something that we need to get in the habit of doing, but sailing with a looser jib is really going to help open that slot up between the jib and the main and get rid of some of that bubbling on the main probably. And then the other thing to look at here is the kite trim. Charlie's trimming to the top of the kite, and I think that's really good for this driving force condition. Here are Oliver and Katie, and as you can see, just like we talked about with Christopher and Kai, Oliver's very active using his main sheet to help steer the boat. He barely moves the tiller at all. And instead uses his weight and the main sheet to steer the boat for him. We'll talk about boat handling a little bit in a different clip when we have everybody's boat handling clips together. But as you can see, he comes out of that with his main trimmed so that the boat continues to head up. And this is when we were reaching, so really, this might not be very indicative of what you should be doing on a downwind, but I think that the main thing to take away here is that the main sheet should be really active, really trying to steer the boat with that main sheet, help correct the heel of the boat with that main sheet, and in this case, loading the boat up as much as possible with the weight on the wire and the weight in the straps. I think it's good to get used to looking at how far from the jib car the jib clew is eased, and in this case, I'd say this is probably a pretty average trim, average to maybe a little bit tight for the downwind. But when he trims that main in, you can see that the jib leech is nice and open, and I think that's not the case for some of the boats. Here we've got Sebastian and Nikolai, and we'll let them get the kite up before we start talking. There we go. Alright, so one of the big things, once you have enough breeze to really fly the kite well, is that you shouldn't be afraid to heat it up as soon as the kite goes up and jump on the wire, even if your crew is not quite ready to focus on trimming, because the skipper always has enough power to keep the crew on the wire, and the sooner you can get out on the wire, the sooner the skipper has the freedom to steer around, and that becomes really important in a race when the boats are all close, because the top boats are all gonna they're all gonna be looking at the guys in front of them and trying to figure out whether or not they can go into a high roll mode right around that windward mark. And if the boat in front of them looks like they're having trouble getting their crew on the wire, boats behind will tend to go for a roll mode and try to roll that guy below them. So they've got it going pretty good here. The main roles of each crew member in this case are the skipper should be steering to keep the boat flat. So Nikolai is doing a really nice job right here. Sometimes when the puffs hit, he just needs to bear away a little bit more, like right there. A little more bear away would be good. And Sebastian's job is to keep that kite trim nice and consistent so that the leech is always curling a little bit. Again, we'll talk about boat handling more in another video. So I think the main thing to take out of the week of downwind sailing is that the skippers all need to be more active on their main sheet trim. They need to really be working to keep that boat flat and driving forward. The younger teams need to focus more on steering to keep the boat flat. And I think that overall, we need to work a little bit on finding the right angle for VMG downwind. Here are Kyler and Jonathan, and one of the points I wanted to make here is that it's really important to know what's going to go wrong next. And this is a case where I think that they didn't tape their front pins before they went out sailing, so the forestay pin and the jib halyard pin, and when they went to hoist, the kite got caught on those pins, and that's a common problem in the 29er, so it's really important to check that and to make sure you always tape those pins. And one of the things to look at here is the jib position. It's cranked in right now, and the main is really far east. So it's really important that in that bearaway you ease the jib, and that's going to become more and more evident as the breeze picks up, because at some point you're going to have so much helm that you're not really going to be able to bear away without easing that jib or sticking the bow in the water. And then on this capsize, right now I want to see both people hiking really hard. I think the problem here is that both people kind of waited to see if the boat would fix itself, and it never did. So I want to see more aggressive flattening when the boat looks like it's about to capsize. Here are Adele and Katie. And I really like Adele's kind of tighter main sheet trim here. I think that on the first couple of days, most people were sailing with their main sheets too eased in general, and they needed to have a little bit more trim because of all the apparent wind that the 29er generates. Katie is on the wire right now, and it looks like they're going pretty fast, But one thing that you can kind of tell by looking is that the jib is, or the kite is pretty tight in, and I would be hesitant to sail this high. I think that it would probably be beneficial to try sailing a little bit lower and see if you can ease that kite out a little bit more and get it projected around the front of the boat more. One of the things you can see here is, like we talked about, the jib is pretty tight, just like on Duncan and Charlie's boat. I think that you want a little bit more ease on that jib to try and get the leeches to match. And now Katie's back in the boat, which I like. It's really important. I think that the mode on this day was for the skipper to try and steer to the crew's weight, but the crew really had to be active in the chop and the waves. Oh, saved it. So basically, when a wave comes, the boat would load up, and you can flatten against that as the crew, but then it's really important for the skipper to see that the crew has their shoulders back and then bear away so that the crew can sit back up. And the whole thing should be a smooth movement. Right there, a little crew hike would be good, and then the skipper can bear away. I like this mode a lot more than the wiring mode a minute ago. Again, nice main sheet trim. Could probably be more active. Okay, and finally we've got Christopher and Kai in the lighter wind, the probably side force conditions. And what they figured out early in the week is that the low mode really pays when it's light. And so I think that what you'll see here is that they sail really eased. You can see that their kite projects to windward of the forestay and the mast much more frequently than on any of the other boats. And they sail really, really deep. And I like that mode a lot. The one thing that they have to be careful of is that their kite collapses an awful lot. So I think that in this condition, the role of the crew is really to tell the skipper where to sail. So the crew is almost driving the boat. The crew should be constantly talking about how much pressure they have in the kite, and you should be sailing as low as you can without losing pressure in the kite.